What's going on, PTSD Buddies? I'm doing a live chat with one of our members. I sent the invite out, so I'm just hanging tight here and waiting to see if he's going to join me for a PTSD Buddy chat. He's an Australian PTSD Buddy. Oh, there he goes. Let's see here. Being at it, here he comes. He's an Australian buddy. He just took a 2-week time off. Ah, there he is.
G'day.
Turn you up now. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, just hanging out here with my best buddy.
Oh, yeah.
This is
What's
Teddy.
the dog's name?
Teddy.
Teddy.
Teddy, yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be the best friend in the world because I got a dog myself. I know what it's like.
Yeah, well, he's actually got a brother who's not allowed in, otherwise they'll be fighting for the camera.
Camera hogs, eh?
Yeah.
So you're down in Australia. So it's,
Yeah.
You're just waking up, I guess, not too long ago.
Yeah, I had a bit of a sleep in, thanks to my my melatonin. That's been a good friend of mine lately. So yeah, that gets me up at sort of mid-morning.
Yeah.
And being a Saturday here, you know, I sort of extended that for another hour before diving into the kitchen and preparing some brekkie for everyone.
Now you deal with PTSD. Has sleep been one of the issues for you?
Yeah, that was the sleep issue was one of the first things that that I noticed and that I began to become quite overwhelmed with. And because of the lack of sleep that I was having, it wasn't allowing me to function throughout the day. And so that, and I'm sure a lot of people would experience the same thing, was having me, you know, very much on the edge.
Sure, yeah, so, you're not sleeping.
So from there, you know, I'd have my outbursts, and then I was sort of, you know, easily triggered. A lot of the flashbacks, I just didn't have that sort of, my nervous system basically had not had good rest, and it was fatigued, and I just wasn't able to, you know, push through any of that. So sleep was one of the major things, definitely.
Yeah. Can you pinpoint a reason why you weren't getting sleep? Like, was it nightmares, or your brain didn't shut off?
But actually both of those two. I'm not sure which one's first, but definitely, you know, the racing thoughts, just the random racing thoughts, flashbacks were sort of in amongst all of that. And also just the frustration of not being able to get to sleep made it even harder not to get to sleep. I've
had nights like that, yeah. Where you're mad because you can't sleep. You can't fall asleep.
Yeah. Night sweats, a lot of those sort of secondary symptoms were part of what built up to become the catalyst for me to eventually reach out and get some support from, you know, professional people.
Oh yeah. Now I don't. There's a few people watching. I just want to remind people, if you got any questions or you got any comments, go ahead and write them in there, and we can both see them, and we'll do our best to answer questions or anything. Can I ask how long you've been dealing with PTSD, and where did the PTSD come from? Okay, I don't want you to have to go into bad stories, right? I would never ask that, right? Unless you felt like you wanted to, but
yeah, absolutely. So my PTSD, let's say moment, was following surgery that I had in March of last year. And there was a build up towards that because I actually ruptured my ACL, my arterial cruciate ligament, in September of 2016. And I also tore my meniscus at the same time. So that was September of 2016. And we had only just moved into our new home. So what I was looking forward to was basically a new start, because we'd been sort of gypsies for about 2 years. a new start. I had shut down my clinic about 8 months prior to it, and was going to reestablish my business locally. So I had quite a few things to look forward to. Having said that, I also, if I want to put myself in another box, another category, a highly sensitive person, HSP. So, and I have been all my life. So, you know, I have very high expectations, and then, but when things don't sort of manifest, I sort of spiral downwards. So anyway, I'm ready to move in. We've just moved into our home. I've got all these things, you know, to look forward to, and I'm in the kitchen and, you know, baking bread of all things, because this injury normally happens in sports.
Yeah.
And so that's where it happened. I was twisting and turning, blah, blah, blah. Left it for 3 weeks thinking that I'd only sprained my knee. Eventually made my way over to a GP that took x-rays and ultrasound and eventually an MRI, which then said, this is what you've done to your knee. You need to go and see a surgeon. I went to go and see my surgeon, had a meniscectomy, which is basically a meniscus repair first,
Okay.
because he was concerned with a clotting issue that I've had in the past. My blood doesn't clot very well. So he just wanted to gauge what my bleeding was like by running some tests and just doing the meniscus repair. So by this stage, I'd also had a lot of muscle wastage, which happens when, you know, you're not active. The muscle just wastes away and just becomes, you know, just jelly, really. So there, I was already on the back foot with that, with the recovery. That operation was in November of 2016, and my major surgery was in March of 2017. So I had my ACL reconstruction. Of course, now all of my goal setting and my planning had gone out the window. So I was already trying to cope with that, thinking that my life was going to get back on track, and this had happened. And then during my surgery, whilst they were drilling, they fractured my tibia, which is the bone, the shin bone part of the leg, just below the knee, which was cool, I guess, if you can say that. And so I was in hospital overnight, but by that point, I'd already met with my surgeon in the post-operative or post-op room. And he described the operation, and he described that, you know, there was a couple of complications with having to add another screw in and blah, 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 but no mention of a fracture.
Yeah.
Came home and I started the prescription on the pain relief that he had written up for me, which was two endone every 2 hours. An endone is an opiate, so it's a pretty strong painkiller. And I was also, in addition to that, taking tramadol. So I was taking mostly the endone every 2 hours as prescribed on the box. I came home on the Saturday, the day after my surgery. On the Monday, I contacted my surgeon to say, look, the pain is just excruciating. The research that I had done building up to the surgery on YouTube, following other people who had had the surgery, I knew exactly the procedure. However, one of the things he did mention post-operatively was that I would no longer be able to start my rehab, and I would have to be non-weight bearing for 6 weeks, and in a hinge.
Heavy what? Weeks?
Non-weight bearing.
Okay.
So it means I could not apply any weight to my leg, which in normal cases, when you have this procedure, you're pretty much up after like 6 days. You know, sort of hobbling around and starting your exercises. Well, I was told not to do that. And of course, I didn't ask any questions. I just followed his instructions.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So that was the Friday surgery. Saturday, I was home. Monday, I called him, no response. I called him on Tuesday, eventually got a call back from him. So this is now the second conversation I've had with him since my surgery. He said, pain relief, just continue with the pain relief. Unfortunately, you can't take anything stronger than you're already taking, and that I will see you in another week, which was my follow-up appointment after my surgery. By the Thursday, which was I think the 22nd or 23rd of March, I wasn't feeling well. I'd had a really bad night sweat, nausea, Just basically, I felt like I was at death's door. Really, ended up at a medical. Sorry.
You think that was from the meds or that was from the pain, or I guess a combination of both?
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
But I had previously made an appointment with the local GP so that I could have my dressings checked. So I went there and I said, look, this is how I'm feeling and this is the medication. I brought the boxes and she said, you need to go to emergency because you're actually overdosing.
Jesus.
The prescription that was written out to me was incorrect. It should have read every 4 hours rather than every 2. And the maximum milligram.
Doing a number, brother.
Sorry.
The doctor's doing a number on you, man. Like holy.
Yeah.
That would make me like. That would almost make me scared to go see the doctor again when they make mistakes like that. Like, holy, right?
Yeah. So so what I did was, rather than go to emergency, the GP said, look, let me call your surgeon because my surgeon is only in the city once a week. He's from a different area of Melbourne. So he's in the area on a Thursday, which so happened to be the same day that this was all happening. So I bypassed emergency. I went to his office.
The doctor doesn't even live in the same city as you. That's awesome.
No. Yeah. He comes in on a Thursday to do consultations and then does surgery on a Friday. Mind you, when I went into my surgery, he was nowhere in sight. He was running late and I had met his assistant. Anyway, just quickly.
You ended up dealing with the doctor's assistant?
Well, yeah. I've learned afterwards that surgeons will do that. They will opt to have their assistants do a procedure rather than themselves. So it's quite possible that he didn't actually do the surgery on me, that it was his assistant. But of course, they're not going to expose that. They're not going to offer that knowledge. So when I got to his office, I was wheelchaired in, overdosing.
Yeah.
And of course, I brought all my documentation from my surgery with me, including an X-ray they took on that Saturday post-operatively. And the first thing he did was he said, oh, the medication's incorrect. Just take it every 4 hours. So he sort of dismissed the fact that I was, going through what I was going through. And he held up this X-ray and he said, do you know what this other screw is here on the X-ray? And I said, well, I know that there are 2 screws involved in an ACL reconstruction. I don't know what that one is. And he said, well, during your surgery, your tibia was fractured because you have weak bones and you actually have osteoporosis. You're very young for 50 to have osteoporosis, but unfortunately, this is what has occurred. And of course, I just broke down because I really thought now that my goals that I had set were going to be further away from where I thought they were going to be. I knew that I'd have 6 weeks rehab and life would just get back to normal. But now it was 12 months, from 6 weeks to 12 months. So that already then my trauma had already started to build from that. Of course, he didn't go to any further explanation about that and said, basically, this is the situation and, go home now and I'll see you in another week's time. So what I did is when I got home, I actually went cold turkey.
Really?
And
yeah.
Of course, that then put me through withdrawal symptoms. On top of, so, the night sweats and the night terrors and all of that sort of thing. And of course, this also triggered something that I had managed most of my life, which was childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So my childhood trauma was basically emotional, mental, and physical abuse with with, let's say, an undercurrent of sexual abuse. And I had worked on that for 20 years in my early adulthood, which I had managed quite
Yeah.
well.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, the floodgates opened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a whole combination of surgery stuff and then childhood stuff, and it was just
Oh,
heading for me randomly, you know.
yeah, that's a lot, brother.
Yeah. So, of course, with so much muscle wastage, not having been able to move around for that 6-week period, that I wasn't able to do the weight bearing work. Of course, now, even with the rehab that I have done, I have very, very little muscle in my quadricep, which is my thigh part of my leg. It has affected, you know, my business is gone. My partner has had to support me because I'm not able to get any government help due to the fact that on paper, my partner earns, you know, beyond the threshold, but, you know, there are bills to pay and things to do. And so it just accumulated. So what happened was not long after that appointment, I actually went out to have a bone density scan, which is a scan that's specifically done for people who have osteoporosis to measure bone density, and that was clear.
Oh, okay, good.
No bone. I took this report back to my surgeon. He dismissed it, saying, no. All this means is that where the actual test was done, you don't have osteoporosis there, but you have it in your legs. So I took it further. In fact, just the other day, I had an appointment with an aged care specialist, because osteoporosis is an aged care condition.
Right.
And he checked all the boxes. He says, you do not have osteoporosis. I've had some blood tests, testosterone levels, all that sort of stuff that might affect a male having osteoporosis. So I've got all these different specialists around me that have said, no, you're in the clear. And so now I need to collate all of this information, and I'm going to take a legal path now from this. I just need to acknowledge Elizabeth here, who has said quite a few things which I've not read, but I just want to acknowledge and say hi to her.
Yeah, I've been seeing some of the comments too. Yeah. She's been saying.
Yeah. So in addition to that,
you've been through a lot, brother.
Yeah. So about 2 months after this had happened is when I reached out to my GP, who then referred me to a psychologist. I also had a psychiatric assessment done. I was on valdoxin for 5 months, which is an antidepressant. I then transitioned to citalopram, so I'm on citalopram now with compounded melatonin to help me sleep. Coming from a natural therapies background, that was challenging for me as well to start popping, you know, chemicals.
Of course, yeah.
So I sort of went against all of my sort of core beliefs, but you know what? I am grateful to the pharmaceutical platform in this case, that it has managed to, you know, get me through those moments. So yeah, and it's still ongoing.
Yeah. You find the medication helping?
The valdoxin I was taking at night. It went from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams, and I just felt that it did put me in a dark place.
Yeah.
Where I found myself, and I will share this, it's quite detailed. I was, you know, on the toilet doing number twos, and and I just broke down into tears, saying, you know, where am I? I didn't know where I was, like, in my life. My personality had been extinguished, and of course I went to the GP with this, and he transitioned.
She always says there that she's on it too.
Sorry?
Someone made a comment there that they're also on the same medication.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that. Zoe. Yes. Yeah. And now I'm just able to being able to access my own skill set, professional skill set, and apply
Okay.
some of those things to myself and sort of get myself there. But yeah, the CPTSD that was sort of re-triggered for me also had me face a few things as well, pretty much. So, you know, with my therapy, it's been, I'm not sure on the percentage, but let's say, you know, 40% PTSD and 60% CPTSD. Sometimes that changes. But one of the things that I have implemented and taken action in is that to disassociate myself a little more from my childhood trauma is to change my name.
Oh yeah, you're talking earlier about changing your name.
Yeah, so I'm just going through the paperwork now.
Yeah.
Change both my first name and my surname, and just reset my identity to some degree.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, that's been, it's been sort of cathartic. It's allowed me to sort of let go of a few things, but you know, it's amazing what small actions like that can shift.
Is that like
And
resetting your?
sorry.
Is that almost like resetting yourself for you,
Yeah,
like starting
it is.
over?
It is in a way. It is in a way, because in my mind, by taking on a new identity, I don't recognize. I sort of don't recognize that what happened to me has happened to the person with this name. It happened
Yeah.
to a part of me that I've sort of let go, and a name, you know, that holds a lot of significance.
Yeah.
That's our identity, really, in a way. And by resetting that, I'm attempting to distance myself from from that a little bit more. So we'll just
Yeah.
see how that goes.
And you, I was seeing on PTSD Buddies, you just took a vacation or some time to yourself anyway.
Yeah, well, for 16 months, I pretty much became housebound.
Yep.
My PTSD basically isolated me from being a very outgoing person. Was very much an extrovert, let's say, to isolating myself very much. I had no
Social
contact.
anxiety?
Sorry?
Social anxiety and stuff?
It developed into social anxiety, definitely, especially when I did step out of the house, just to the point where I just check out the street to see if there are any neighbors around, and would wait until they would, you know, disperse or go back into their homes before I check my mail, to, oh gee, I need to go to the supermarket. I mean, my partner could also go, but I felt I needed to challenge myself, but
Yeah,
at times
I've had
wasn't
moments.
really.
Being in Canada, I've had to shovel the driveway, right, with the snow.
Right.
And I've had
Yeah.
moments where I look at the window and I see my neighbor shoveling his driveway. So I don't want to go out now because he's out there. I'd rather wait till he's done and then go out there and there's no one else around.
Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. So with that, my new home, our new home had gone from being a home to an institution.
Yeah.
It was no longer my home. It was, you know, an institution, really. Um, and
Hey, Julie.
Hi, Julie, and Zoe. So it was at the highly recommended and by my GP, my psychologist, and the psychiatrist who had done my second evaluation to get away. And of course, I agreed with that. But then, leading up to my departure, I was trying to come up with reasons not to go.
Yeah, I've done that.
Yeah, so I never had any
Especially-
anxiety. I love traveling. I love, you know, getting on a plane, but this time it was very different. And it's just fortunate that we have my partner's family have a little apartment there on the Gold Coast, up in Queensland, northern part of Australia, where it's hot and
Nice.
humid. And so I did that. Yeah, I did that. And it did shift. I would highly recommend to anyone who is challenged by it is just to take small steps towards much bigger steps. And I do have this sort of saying for myself, and I'm not sure whether someone else said it and I subconsciously remembered it, but I use the analogy of taking one step towards the something means taking one step away from the nothing or the nothingness. So
that
towards
sounds like
somethingness and away from the nothingness. And that's pretty much my motto, which I'm trying to keep in mind. Yeah, so so I got away to the Gold Coast, definitely took in some salt air, a different environment, and I would, I mean, it doesn't even have to be, it can be any place really, you know, any place. Like some of your videos that I've seen, you know, when you're walking your dog, you know, even though there might be familiar places, if you open yourself up to even routine, you might actually find new things in amongst the routine, you know. So yeah.
Zoe just asked, do you have good days and bad days?
Yeah, well, the good days are getting are sort of manifesting more frequently than they have, and it's only since I got away. And they were probably, good days were probably happening before that, but because I was resistant to them, and this is one thing that I do notice through my observations, you know, on Facebook and other platforms, is that, and I don't mean to offend anyone, or because I've been in those dark places, and you know, I haven't been to war, I haven't been in a major natural disaster, I haven't been, you know, but yet I believe that trauma is trauma, and you can't really measure, you know. But I could have chosen to stay in that dark place, and it's very, you don't have to do any work to stay there, you know. And so why I'm saying this is that, you know, before I went away, I probably did have good days, but I just wasn't. Not either I refused or just wouldn't allow myself to embrace them. Someone says a joke. In my head, I'm going, I want to laugh, but I'm not going to. I'm going to deny myself this experience. Don't know why.
Yeah.
But if I laugh, is that sending a message to anyone around me? And is that going to have them think, well, he must be okay then? So for some reason, I needed people to see me, or, you know, in my state. If, you know, I'm telling people about my trauma, I'm telling them about how my trauma has affected my life. But as soon as I, you know, I might laugh or I might change something, you know, are people going to start to judge me, you know? But now I can see the good days. Yeah, I can definitely see the good days.
Hey, Elizabeth asked for you to repeat your quote that you said a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. So this is something that I would use with my clients when I had my clinic, and that is one step forward towards the somethingness is one step away from the nothingness. And I got this, actually, I have to give credit to the original version of The Never-Ending Story.
Oh, my wife loves that movie.
So if anyone's familiar with the original film of The Never-Ending Story, because there was a remake of it, I'm not sure if they used the term, but the nothingness was taking over Fantasia. And that's pretty much what PTSD or CPTSD was and is for me. A nothingness.
Yep. I get it. That is, I get it, yeah. Zoe just asked, do you have any advice for when you have really bad days?
Yeah, well, some of it goes against my training, my professional training, and some of it is okay. But for me, it's been embrace it. Don't fight that bad day. Just be okay with it.
That
Don't
what helps
go ahead.
is I know if I'm having a bad day, I know it's not going to last.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a bad month. I know eventually I'm going to get over this hump, right? And that's what helps me, right?
Yeah.
I think that kind of what you're saying there.
Yeah, definitely. You know, don't allow it to, you know, anchor you in, you know, like I'm having a bad day and I'm already thinking tomorrow's going to be a bad day, and that means the whole week is going to be bad. Just be aware of that self-talk and simply be okay with the day, and that is just not a good day for you. You know, whether you know, take a few hours nap, and if that allows you to get through the day a little quicker or whatever it is, but just be okay with it. I think we invest too much energy in trying to deal with it and fight our way out of a bad day. And then that just fatigues our ability to be present the next day.
Yeah, I agree. Being negative.
Sorry?
I said being negative and being angry can drain your energy.
Yeah, definitely. You know, and I think if you are, if when you are negative, you know, don't parent yourself. Don't give yourself such a hard time, but because you are being negative. I think it's all about awareness. If you're aware that you are being negative, then that's already, you know, a percentage of the way out of that. Awareness, I think, is a big key in it. I have yellow bits of cardboard around the house.
Yeah.
And this was a tool that was given to me by my psychologist. So I have these little yellow cards around the house, scattered around the house. And what happens is when I see that yellow red card, that's a reminder for me to check in with myself. Because when you have the symptoms of PTSD, and that could be memory, for example, or not being in the moment, I might just sort of float around the house. And of course, I can't even remember which room I came out of and which room I'm going into, because I've got all this stuff happening and triggers and flashbacks, etc. And that little yellow card just goes, stop. And I'm like, whoa, okay, yep, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm about to do. This is what I'm thinking, which, okay, I've had enough of that, you know, disconnect with that train of thought. So, you know, that, and I think Elizabeth mentioned a journal. Writing is a great thing. Whether I've seen on the PTSD Buddies group, there are a few people writing poetry and whatever. All of that, I think, are great tools in allowing. Of course, one of the things that I did want to mention here is that you know, for those people who are living or managing their PTSD or CPTSD, especially in childhood trauma, when we grow, everything evolves and we develop. You know, our lungs develop, so we're able to take in more air, which gives more oxygen to the blood, which, you know, helps our bones to grow, blah, 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 blah. But one of the main components is our nervous system. So one of the things that I've learned, and I've had this confirmed by the psychologist that I was seeing, it's not actually a documented theory, but it's one that I share with many people upon my platform, and that is in childhood trauma, the development of the nervous system allows us as adults to draw upon the nervous system when we're dealing with life-threatening situations, so etc. So if we've had prolonged trauma as children, this impacts the nervous system, and the nervous system is not able to develop as we grow. So in my case, being a HSP, highly sensitive person, I believe stems from that, in that my ability to react or respond to situations would be the same as that of a, say, 12 or 13-year-old.
Yeah.
My nervous system did not develop as into adulthood, let's say. it was stunted.
Yeah.
And so my struggle was, of course, with people around me was, you know, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you take things to heart too much, you know, you should get over it. You know, lots of people go through surgery. Well, what about people who lose a limb? What about, yeah, you know, so I have to then explain to those people that
that's exhausting to have to explain that too.
Yeah, you know, from a physiological perspective, my body, my nervous system is actually not able to process trauma the way I'm 51 now, so I have to say a 51-year-old would normally deal with trauma or stress or any of those sorts of things. So there's a lot, depending on the individual's biological or physiological ability to deal. And I think this is why two people might go through the same trauma, but will be affected differently, or their ability to process that will be different. Thank you, Zoe. Yeah. So sorry if I'm going on.
No, it's very interesting, and I agree with what you're saying. Right? I can see how, like, when a child goes through trauma, I mean, it'll affect their whole body, their whole way of life, way of being, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just seeing Zoe's comment here. I feel sorry for my babies when I've had a bad day because all I want to do is sleep or just sit there and do nothing, can't face the world. And I can relate this to my own mother. Of course, I don't have contact with my parents, nor either of my siblings. But I do believe that my mother went through some form of PTSD in her own childhood, and her inability to parent was affected. And of course, that came through in her aggressive, manipulative manner, in the way in which when she was having her moments, of course, as we all know now, we have PTSD as the heading, but back then, of course, it may have been something else or nothing at all. But yeah, I look back at those moments where I would, as a child, was close to death.
Yeah.
You know, gasping for air because I had either my mother or my father's hand around my throat, or of course my dad would have also gone through something in his own childhood. But it's interesting that parents will say that's how it was for us, you know, so it's okay for them to behave in a particular way. But having gone through this this experience of my most recent PTSD, even though I have distanced myself from my parents and whatever, it has allowed me to have a little bit more understanding from their perspective, even though they were abusive. I get them a little more, you know, that they may, as in fact, have been going through their own trauma and were, you know, not able to cope with it.
Yeah, triggered themselves.
Yeah. So that's what it is.
Brother. Yeah, I hear you. I'm still going to let you go. So before we go, any final words for our listeners, or any final tips before we say goodbye?
Yeah, like, I think, again, like I said, I see a lot of people posting things, and I really feel, you know, for them and what their experience has been and is, an ongoing experience in their journey. But I think, you know, changing the dialogue, changing the language that you use can also help. You know, taking you out of a victim type of sense of being, identity, to more of a, you know, survivor identity, to more of a, you know, a more empowered position. And of course, I have put posts up in the past, which I have actually deleted, because some people do get rather irritated with people being positive, let's say, you know, or people's ability to push through their PTSD symptoms, or so I think just being aware and acknowledging and embracing other people's journeys, regardless of where they are on their journey, is really important. I think we all need to respect that.
Yeah,
So
I hear you, man.
basically about, you know, just being aware of self is a good thing. Definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, listen, man, thanks for having a chat with me. I know you're changing your name, so I'm not going to say your name or anything.
Okay.
Right? But
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Let's do another chat again soon, eh? And and
absolutely.
a lot of fun.
Cool. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks to all of those that have shared their comments and feedback, and I can just say that this moment now that I've been able to share with you has taken me one step closer to the somethingness and one step further away from the nothingness. So thank you very much, Jamie.
There it is again. That needs to be on a shirt.
Possibly. Thank you.
All right, brother. You take care. Have a good one, and have a great morning.
You too. See you later.
All right.
Bye.
All right, everybody. That was my first PTSD buddy chat in a while. It was a lot of fun. You can find this video now on YouTube. All right, it's going to be going to the YouTube channel. So if there's anyone watching who wants to do a PTSD buddy chat with me, just send me a private message on Facebook, and we'll set one up. And if you are upset because you missed the beginning of the live video, you can go to my Facebook profile and hit the follow button. And I think when you do that, you get a notification every time that I go live, because I'm going to be doing a lot of them. Pretty soon we're doing a 2-week across Newfoundland tour. A lot of live videos going to happen, right? So anyway, have a good night. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Cheers, everybody.